Ah. Blessings, everybody. This is Allison from Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. What are you waiting for? Choking. And if you get anything from my work at Connect the Dot, an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are in the description below. AlleyCatCreations211.com is where you can see all the artwork that I make. And if you're interested in anything, please email me. I do things privately. 3D memberships is a really great way to support my channel, support me, and make sure this doesn't crash and burn, baby, burn. Perks. I do giveaways once a month. I have raffles, and each member gets a free entry into my raffles. Raffles are inexpensive, and you're getting good value for that alone. And member only channel member videos. I know my brain is off. Sorry this is coming out late. I had a vicious, it started out as a headache and then it submerged into a migraine. So I kind of like rested my eyes. I got knocked in the face via a headbutt right here. So I was just a mess today. But I'm feeling a lot better and I want to get a reading in. Tomorrow I will be live for Friday Night Live on Valentine's Day. Yay! Fun. Um, the Seventh Seal. I did a part one to this because this chapter is immensely long. And if I would have read the whole thing, it would have drove me nuts and probably you nuts. So I'm going to finish that. I'll hopefully finish it up today. We'll see how my head goes. Um, Anything else I need to tell you, lovely people? I just want to reiterate, I want to thank everybody for supporting me and for being there for me. Hopefully I can get to, we have more snow coming on Saturday. So tomorrow I'm going to get to the post office and hopefully the T-Mobile store and get an internet box and then cancel my other account with the other people because holy crap. No. Mm-mm. Not fun. Mm-mm. So we'll see what happens. Things are expensive and I can't afford shit. Anywho, I believe this is where I wrote a post-it and I don't know where it went. I have a habit of having post-its and they disappear. So let's hope where I am. I'll just read the top of this page and let's, if I'm repeating, I do apologize. Coming to verses 13 and 14, we again find this repeated mention of lightning, further emphasizing the presence of electricity in connection with this fire of the Lord. The truth that furnishes the key to the higher evolution of the race is contained in verses 16 through 21 of this chapter, and in verses 19 through 17 of the 10th chapter, referring to the movements of the living creatures. In the 10th chapter, Ezekiel relates having seen the same vision as the one described, with the exception that the faces of the cherub was seen instead of the face of the ox. He takes particular care to tell us that It is identically the same living creature in the presence of the cherub, equivalent to the cherubim, is wholly consistent. Please read both chapters carefully. In regard to the figure of the wheel, so often referred to, this word wheel is translated elsewhere in the margin as whirling dust. Here again, we find the same idea as expressed by the whirlwind and the fire mentioned in the 4th verse of the first chapter. The action of spirit symbolized by wind on matter, for he tells us the appearance of the wheel was like unto color of a beryl. Now, a beryl may be either green or yellow, but evidently the yellow flame-colored beryl is meant here. Now look at the 13th verse of the 10th chapter. As for the wheels, it was cried unto them in my hearing, O wheel. For the wheel to be thus addressed suggests the presence of a living intelligence, indicating the very spirit of life itself is inseparably connected with this action of the spirit on matter, which is apparently just what the prophet is trying to impress upon us when he recounts in so many ways the movements of the creatures. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. When those went, these went. When those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Ezekiel 1:19-21. What does this portrayal of the inseparable union of spirit of life with material substance, so many times reiterated, signify, if not that in the manifestation of the universal life energy, next beyond or within electricity, we contact the very spirit of life itself in connection with this electrical fire of the Lord? This saying has been attributed to Mr. Edison, that we might as well spell electricity God, and we see how closely he has approached to the truth. For I firmly believe that all this is to teach us that it is a combination of electrical and spiritual power functioning through the uplifted sex force of soul complements, that it is to be the means whereby we shall be liberated from the grosser material of which our bodies are composed, and gradually acquire the more ethereal quality of body that can receive from the air the nourishment necessary for its substance. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. The question naturally arises that if this be true of one man and woman, why true of any man and woman joined in legal wedlock? Because in the first place, this is unquestionably the information intended to be given by the symbol of Aaron's rod budding, and it's having the power to remove the murmurings of the children of Israel, the impotence of the capacities or the powers of man, which take rise from his ideas of understanding of the truth, the facts concerning all life, that they die not, and the emphasis laid on the fact that the stranger that came nigh was to be put to death. But independently of this, by this new understanding, there is found to be present in the love relation of two spiritual mates an element of sacredness and worship, which I believe you will agree with me in anything but commonly experienced. The chastening that soul has received before it is able to find its mate, and the rest found in the union with the other soul through the Christ consciousness, produces a quality of love that can exist only between two such individuals and is necessary as the magnet to attract the current of electrical and spiritual force, which alone possesses transforming power. In this, as everywhere throughout the universe, the spiritual and physical are related. Therefore, the right spiritual conditions are necessary before the right physical conditions can exist. An interesting example of this interrelation of the elements of the universal substance with spiritual realities and the consistency of this relation in all modes of expression is brought to our attention in this connection. For instance, we are told that solar ray corresponding to the planet Mars is red, and its metal iron. And in this further example, we find the color red associated with the metal iron. Red is the color corresponding to the qualities typified by the sign of the bull or ox, which in their higher aspects are seen to be strength and pure ardent love. These qualities Ezekiel, in calling attention to the ox in his description of the living creatures, shows us to be necessary to produce the Superman whose possibilities are seen through the meaning of the holy name, to be evolved from his present limited life only, as he attains a right understanding of the sex capacity, the physical power of which is indicated by the different references to lightning. To be electrical in this way, iron is again associated with the color red through the quality symbolized by this color. For we know that a soft iron core, or something that has been charged with drawing power of soft iron, for the amateur is necessary before electricity can be drawn from the air by dynamo. The armature might be revolved indefinitely, but if the magnetic core was lacking, no electricity would be gathered. On the other hand, we know that even with a properly magnetized core, if the whole dynamo could be enclosed under a glass case and a perfect vacuum produced, there would be no electricity gathered, for the magnet could not contract with the air. Now that union of the souls and bodies of the true spiritual mates forms the perfectly equipped dynamo is no mere figure of speech. It is an actual fact. But the union of the particular souls and bodies, which are partial expressions of the same complete soul, is necessary for the right vibratory conditions to exist both physically and spiritually. For only the requisite quality of love and spiritual understanding of this power can produce in the flesh the properly magnetized iron core, with which is necessary to draw through the mind to the body the transforming effects of the spirit. In this we glimpse the sweep of the ancient wisdom, which declares that man is the microcosm, that is to say, the reproduction of all the principles which give rise to the manifestation of the universe, or the macrocosm. Okay, she's gaining back her credibility in non-other stuff. Because some of her stuff, in my eyes, the right spiritual conditions correspond to the access of dynamo to the air. For until there is no thought or impulse that can serve as a barrier between the man and woman and the conscious presence of God during sexual congress, the right conditions do not exist, because the secret power of the holy name abides in the trinity of dualities, God and man, spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, as two in one, and in magnet that can attract the electro-living current, which has power to transform physical tissue. The spiritual element predominates. To the women must be allowed the initiative in recognizing her mate. This is the working of the law, and when her soul has found its rest, surrendered to complete. But this can never be until all the longings of her soul for holy things are understood, appreciated, and supplemented by the spiritual aspirations and godlike qualities in the soul of the man. But such surrender does not imply the giving up of individuality, but rather the establishment of perfect equilibrium throughout the whole being, because of the fact that each finds his complement in the other. For this reason, there can be the perfect merging of two lives into one without deterioration, to either, but rather added strength and stimulation for united service and continuous development, which is the plan of the Creator, to be worked out in the spiritual evolution of the race. But for these conditions to be possible, both must possess a hunger and thirst after righteousness, for not till this continual prayer for righteousness and worship of the Father can ascend unhindered through the absence of dross in the soul of her mate? Can a woman's offering be complete and effective unto life, for the offering of the body merely for the satisfying of the flesh, without the presence of the necessary spiritual impulse and aspiration, possesses no evolutionary possibilities? This furnishes an index to the kind of character the men of the world will have to possess before they can hope to draw to themselves their true mate. There can be no foreigning of genuine merit, no halfway purpose entertained. The man as a whole must right about face and realize that spirituality is not a thing to be sought along by women, that spirituality in no wise deprives a man of any virile quality, but causes him to lose only crude perversities, which some apparently think an indication of masculine valor. We cannot expect to receive the blessing of the Spirit if we are ashamed to acknowledge our allegiance to it. This is not because these are withheld as a punishment, but because we ourselves close the channel through which they can come to us. It is needless to say that these are not the conditions generally existing with reference to physical union. Indeed, for the most part, it is probably not been thought of, nigh, more with many. Such sanctity in connection with this matter could doubtless not be understood. It was of these in the material stage of development that Jesus spoke when he said, "Neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you." But all are destined to pass beyond this stage in time, for the Father will draw all men unto himself. Nor should the attainment of this standard on the part of both man and women be thought possible only at some distant future time or by some recluse. Not that temporarily retirement may not be profitable for us at times, but we are not intended always to live apart from men. The realization of these conditions centers in a most earnest desire, an undivided purpose to live the highest life, and is by no means impossible in the century and year by men and women engaged in daily occupation for a livelihood, but with the vision that lifts the thoughts and aims above and beyond material things and the limitations of the physical senses. Not that material things are not necessary and beautiful at their right valuation. They are absolutely necessary in their tangible rigidity in our present state of development. But until we can grasp the sense of reality, the greater importance and beauty and satisfaction of the life of the Spirit, the life live close to God, we are allowing material things to fetter us and rob us of the sweeter harmonies of life, rather than serve our highest good as they are designed to do. Our greatest difficulty in believing such obtainment possible seems to be in actually fearing to face ideal conditions, to get really close to God and be convinced for ourselves what happiness and possibilities are for us if we take God with us into everything and do not limit the Holy One of Israel. As did the Israelites of old, which we are told by the authors of Hebrews, who, it is evident, had such a perfect understanding of this whole subject, was the reason why they could not enter into the rest, liberation from toil and privation, and rest unto the soul, prepared for the people of God, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. And indeed, as long as we insist upon measuring the attainment of the future by that of the past, and refuse to believe it possible to realize any given ideal, naturally, our own refusal to accept it will necessarily keep us from obtaining it. Someone said to me not long ago, a minister, by the way, "What is the use of having ideals if you are ever going to realize them?" No, I did not misunderstand him. I have quoted him verbatim, I believe. My thought in this matter is, what is the use of having ideals unless you intend to realize them? Why should we be paralyzed with fright because an ideal, which we may be willing to accept as possible, sometime becomes real? I admit the naturalness of the feeling of awe, if not terror, when we realize that God is actually talking with us through our quickened spiritual comprehension. And like Gideon of old, we cry, Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. But if we really want God and do not turn away, then to us as to Gideon comes the reassuring answer, as from a tender protector leading us through strange scenes and experiences with which we are not familiar. Peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Thinking of this capacity of sex as a weakness of the flesh alone that must be yielded to ever so moderately is not the right understanding in regard to it. We should make no compromise with evil, and what cannot be done with the conscious blessing in the conscious presence of God should never be done. This life energy should be reverenced as an evidence of the presence of the power of the living God in our bodies. We should not be ashamed of it, but control its physical manifestation so perfectly and completely by the right understanding of its spiritual reality, by high thought and high purpose, that as far as our physical comfort is concerned, it is negligible. Then use this uplifted power referred to variously throughout the Bible in its connection with the rod, the sword, and the tree of life. Only when blended in harmony with all the qualities and capacities corresponding to the 7 colors of the spectrum, to which we find reference in the mention made of the rainbow in the last version of the first chapter of Ezekiel. This is the same lesson which is taught by St. John's symbol of the 4 horsemen, recorded in the 6th chapter of Revelation, which by the power of the real truth it portrays will outlive any profanation. And I say, when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering to conquer. And when he had opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they shall kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. The word beast in this connection, referring to the beast which spoke, does not have a bad meaning as one might think. It comes from the Greek word zoon, meaning animal or living being, and it rendered in the Revised Version living creature as in Ezekiel. The term living creature does not necessarily carry the idea of an animal of the lower order. It can mean a human being or a superhuman being, as life or something alive is the predominating thought. It is not the word used in the 1st verse of the 13th chapter, which is translated beast and which means wild animal. The symbol emphasizes the same truth as the vision we have just been considering. The horse typifies passion in its relation to the vitalizing principle in nature. The first horseman rides a white horse. This then represents the spiritual reality of passion, blended in the true proportion with other necessary qualities, for all the rays of light blended into one in the ether, which corresponds to the realm of the spirit, produce white light. Notice that the horseman wears a crown, the symbol governing power, and goes forth conquering and to conquer. This is the power that will eventually conquer all evil and limitation, or misconception of the truth arising from our incompleteness, and bring all into subjection to the kingdom of the spirit. The symbol of the bow we shall not desecrate with words. Its sanctity is inviolable. The second horse is red. This indicates that the qualities typified by the 7 solar rays have been separated in the prism of the psychical plane, mind, which is represented throughout the Bible by water. Hence the prismatic power suggested in this figure. And the red ray, standing alone, not balanced by the others, will necessarily manifest in its lower aspect. Therefore, the horseman's weapon could not refer to the sword of the spirit, but to the weapon of strife, gendered by anger and lust, which has power to hurt in every way. The third horse is black. Some might think that this is to be evil indication. Quite to the contrary, it affords the key to the whole truth. Black is a color produced when all the colors are combined in matter. Paints of 7 colors of the spectrum, when mixed, will produce black. This truth caught here is the physical desire, a quality belonging to the red ray, must not be the first nor only cause for physical union, but that a balance of all the qualities of character, their corresponding colors of which produce black, when combined in material substance, must be brought to bear upon matter before any evolutionary effects can be produced. It is needless to say that the response of the physical organism must necessarily be present in union for change to be affected in the physical body, but not until the body has been crucified and risen again. That is, physical appetite and passion brought thoroughly under the control of the will and permanently subjugated to the mandates of the aspiring soul, have we gained the mastery over the flesh that is necessary to enable us to receive the gift of a quickened spiritual consciousness and to comprehend the attenuating motive and power by which this physiological change can be brought about. Thus, in the matter of our food, to count eating our greatest pleasure and burden the stomach with quantities of food not necessary for our nourishment is gluttony, though there is nothing wrong about enjoying our necessary food. In fact, unless the food is grateful to the palate, the digestive process are not properly stimulated. But the matter of control is always as an established factor to one's well-being and self-respect, and thus the right use of the sex function centers about control, associated with an intelligent understanding of its meaning and with spiritual aspiration. But these matters will naturally adjust themselves through the spiritual growth necessary to lead one to completion. So we have symbolized by the black horse exactly the same qualities as by the white horse, but the latter refers to the spiritual realities represented by all the color rays blended into white light, while the former typifies the physical manifestation of the qualities associated with these same color rays, converged again in matter, applied to the bodies, after having passed through the physical, psychical prism, the mind, each being rightly understood. And in this connection, we note the interest from the 8th verse of the 6th chapter of Zechariah, that it was the white and black horses that were forth into the north, which quieted the spirit of the angel, as related in the account of this prophet's vision in regard to the same truth. Wicked Wild. The horseman carries a pair of balances. This has no reference to famine or privation, but signifies the exact equilibrium which must exist between the forces of spirit and matter in this connection. And note the ratio of the spiritual and physical. Wheat refers to the spiritual reality of the fire of the Lord, barely to the physical element. with 3 measures of barley can be purchased for the price of 1 measure of wheat. Hence, the value of the spiritual element is seen to be threefold that of the physical. The caution is given to hurt not the oil and the wine, meaning the light and understanding of the life of the spirit, 3/4 of the efficiency of the capacity residing in the spiritual actuating motive, and a right understanding of the purpose of the existence of this law. This constitute its use as holiness unto the Lord. The words that were to be given on a plate of pure gold and worn by Aaron upon his forehead. The 4th horse is pale. This signifies passion suppressed unduly or killed. This has been considered the preferable course in regard to this matter by some earnestly desiring spiritual development. It is a natural conclusion when we have advanced far enough for this matter to disturb us at all until our eyes are open to the whole truth. Then we find that dissuaditude. I'd never seen that word before, something like that. Of this function is not the goal to be sought, nor its complete transformation into other channels of creative work. Neither is its sole purpose that of procreation. When we are willing to offer upon the altar of sacrifice anything which we think stands in the way of our spiritual growth, including this tendency of the flesh, then, as in the allegory of Abraham offering up Isaac, to the voice calls to us out of heaven, lay not thy hand upon the lad, and a proper sacrifice is seen to be provided, which we find involves the offering of every atom of our physical bodies, as well as our soul, as a living sacrifice upon God's chosen altar, with the result of overcoming hunger and death in hell. Hades, the grave, which followed in the train of the horseman on the pale horse. It is just this necessity for the exact equilibrium of the understanding between the values of the spiritual and physical elements of the sacrifice that makes the gate so straight and the way so narrow. For while this power must be used and not slain, the physical feature must be understood to exist not as an end in itself, but as a means for the proper working of the law upon the tissues of our bodies. On the other hand, the response of the sensory neurons must not be thought of as wrong or impure in itself, or the thought of guilt will become a barrier between ourselves and God. This normal activity of sex organs was instituted by the all-wise Father as truly in normal action of the heart or lungs. Without the stimulus in both male and female, these organs could not perform their work. Hence, fertilization would be impossible, and consequently, the propagation of the race would be impossible. Then, if it is intended by the Creator, why should we attempt to destroy it? That is, the high and rightful use. And why some most concerned about their spiritual welfare felt they should destroy its natural expression, because in the last analysis they have not yet grasped its higher significance. Their experience may not have enabled them to do so, and consequently have not felt it to be in accord with the thought of God. Indeed, the almost universal concept of its use has not been in accord with God's thought. And as long as one sees in their capacity no higher significance than more gratefulness to the flesh, he may know he has not comprehended the divinity and the comprehended divinely beautiful truth involved. Only through the worship of worth and the longing to get close to God, with the yearning to help everyone else to want him and find him, can one be led to the vantage point where he is enabled to formulate a right concept of this matter. But when we pause to consider the attraction of sex in the light of its origin, its most sacred meaning, and the importance of its office, our pseudo-idealism, which causes us to pronounce God's work unholy, is seen to reflect only our grossly inadequate conception of its full meaning and assumes a humiliating aspect. It seems reasonable to think that as our bodies become less and less dense, approaching the rarity of the spiritual body, the exchange of the electro-living current necessary for their continued revitalization through stimulation of circulation and dissemination of creative energy could take place readily by mere proximity, and that the law as it operates now would give place to this method. But the bridge over which the race must pass from man to Superman to be able to overcome physical limitation, death, and the grave is the hunger and thirst after righteousness and fulfilling of the law of love toward all our fellow men, which awakens our spiritual senses. Till being made perfect in love, we are born by this circumstance or that on the ride of that great law of life, to which distance is no barrier, back to one perfect love relation for us, and we see, as with the eyes of God, the purity of all his works, and come to want God with us in every thought and act of life, and thus be able to use the law effectively as it operates in our present state of existence. So, once again, another book validates the fact that the law of love all things, your fellow man, and that's not excluding anything or anybody. Superman. But what do I know? I just channel high vibratory states. That the physiological result is effected by the union of electrical and spiritual power is made clear enough. Just what the nature of the process is cannot be certainly affirmed, but to me it seems reasonable to think of it simply as a mild and gradual process of electrolysis, disintegration by means of the electrical current finally leaving us in possession of bodies of the more etherical substance that we are told to occupy the intersecties of our coarser physical bodies. This power of the electrical current over certain substances we know has been experimented with in the medical world as a means of disintegrating tumors in calculi. But a prominent specialist in electrical therapeutics tells me that it is not practical for the purpose for the reason that if a current sufficiently strong to affect the disease parts is used, it also breaks down the surrounding healthy tissues. But this effect is just what would be anticipated and required, produced, of course, by an almost imperceivably gradual process to liberate us from the grosser physical matter of our bodies and cause them to be transformed into the spiritual state without being put off in death. My powder moment. My powder moment. She describes, well, not really, because I want to just evaporate into light, but that's just me. But think of the powder stuff that I talk about. A summary of the biblical data as to there being a complement for every person. The reasons given why the measure and quality of love necessary to work the transformation of the body can exist only between two such individuals. The purpose mentioned in the second chapter of Malachi of God's making one, being that he might seek a godly seed, but serve to confirm and supplement Darwin's theory of the importance of sexual selection as a factor in the evolution and progress of man. And the late Ernest Haeckel, whom we know would not base a conclusion on anything but the most material evidence, says in The Evolution of Man. But if we bear in mind how extremely important a part this relation of the two sexes play in the whole of organic nature, in the life of plants, of animals, of man, how the mutual attraction of the sexes, love, is the mainspring of the most heterogeneous and remarkable process, in fact, one of the chief mechanical causes of the highest development of life, we cannot too greatly emphasize the tracing of love to its source, the attractive force of two erotic cells. So wonderful is love, and so monumentous its influence on the life of the soul, or on the different functions of the medullary tube, that here more than anywhere else the supernatural result seems to mock any attempt at natural explanation. Yet comparative evolution leads us clearly and indubitably to the first source of love, the affinity of two different erotic cells, the sperm and ovum. If Haeckel, honest in his conclusions from tangible evidence alone, could have grasped the fact that spiritual reality is the first cause of things material, these wonderful results, which he could plainly see to be the effects of love, would not be mocked. Any attempt at natural explanation. Right in this confession, he unconsciously admits the inability of physical science, unaided by spiritual understanding, to fathom the meaning of existence and light, the way for the continual advancement of mankind. Does not this attraction between male and female cells, of which Haeckel speaks, answer to the attraction between the positive and negative elements of electricity? And have we not then, in this erotic chemotropism of Haeckel, in the modern electromagnetic theory of matter, in the allegorical accounts of the thunder and lightning associated with the holy mountain, and in Ezekiel's symbolical reference to electricity as the vehicle of the very spirit of life itself, a series of related evidences sufficient to convince us of the unlimited recreative, no less than creative possibilities of this fire of the Lord, this physical manifestation of the Christos, which, employed with an intelligent understanding of its nature and purpose, and under the right spiritual conditions, as holiness unto the Lord, law, even to the extent of causing our bodies to obtain to the spiritual state without passing through death. For if the scientists could trace to erotic chemotropism the beginnings of love, such supernatural results in the physical organism through the medullary tube, the earliest form of spinal marrow, what may we not look for the principle of sexual selection carried to the ultimate issue in reunited soul complements, whose love has been chastened and intensified, whose spirits must have found their home in God, they can recognize each other, who thus in purity of thought combine the power of the spiritual and physical reality of the creative energy, and do not limit the Holy One of Israel, empowered to fulfill his covenant by refusing to believe impossible to be done. And owing to the fact that this power is seen to be available only through spiritual development, is it not easy to see the unity of physical and spiritual science, and read a meaning in life's new experiences, and catch the trend of the whole creation plan? We find the active principle and motive power of life to be love, and its fruition happiness. This is greater measure as we can continually ascend toward the glories that eye hath not seen, neither ear heard, but the vistas of which will open before us as we make real in our lives the extent of the possibilities just next beyond, which our present light reveals along our path. We are well aware that it is not Haeckel's thought that there was any spiritual power manifested in the force which he terms erotic chemotropism, but rather that the soul itself was but the result of certain phenomena of matter and ceased to exist at death. However, our interest centers not around his conclusion, but rather his observations as to the fact of the remarkable power of the creative force, whose decision as to the importance of such discoveries we know would not rest on any but the most satisfactory evidence from a materialistic point of view, bringing more strongly into the light the solid facts to stand an enduring monument to the real efficiency of life force to accomplish its creative, evolutionary, and recreative work in the world. Thus, we see the reference to the Christos, whose goings forth have been from an old everlasting, descending into matter to redeem it and lift up all the consciousness of God, is not merely a mystical phase, but does indeed denote the divine reality of a scientific fact, and the scientist who is sufficiently spiritual, or the religionist who is sufficiently unbiased to study the subject in its twofold physical and spiritual aspect, is justified in drawing different conclusions from the same facts that Haeckel has done. For the sake of those who may yet be inclined to regard the belief that we may live eternally without passing through death as merely a visionary theory or feminine fancy, may I be permitted to refer again this subject to thought of Judge Tord, whose opinions are held in esteem by an international following. That he really believed this to be possible is clear from these words. Now, evolution is a continuous process of building up, and what makes the world of today a different world from that of the something saurus and the pterodactyl is a successive building up of more and more complex organisms, culminating at last in the production of man as an organism, both physically and mentally capable of expressing the life of the supreme intelligence by means of an individual consciousness. Why then should not the power which is able to carry on the race as perpetually improving expression of itself do the same in the individual? That is the question which we have to deal. In other words, why need the individual die? Why should not go on in perpetual expansion? I don't know who writes this shit, but oh my gosh, driving me nuts. This question may seem absurd in the light of past experience. Those who believe only in blind forces answer that death is the law of nature. And those who believe in the divine wisdom answer that it is the appointment of God. But strange as it may seem, both these answers are wrong. That death should be the ultimate law of nature contradicts the principle of continuity as exemplified in the life-ward tendency of evolution, and that it is the will of God is most empathetically denied by the Bible, for that tells us that he that has the power of death is the devil. There is no beating about the bush, not God, but the devil sends death. There is no getting out of the plain words. Anyone not familiar with the invaluable book, The Bible Mysteries and Bible Meanings, should not fail to acquaint themselves with it. The fact that to the author was not revealed the exact method of this life-ward law's operation, the union of soul complements through spiritual evolution, which brings about the conditions that make it possible for the law to act upon the substance of the body directly as well as through the mind, and that in consequence his work sets forth only an exposition of the general principle in the universal application, in no wise confutes the interpretation of the particular application set forth in this volume, but instead strengthens the evidence of its truth, in view of the fact that his conclusions draw from study along general lines only coincide so perfectly as far as he's carried them, with the underlying truth of the individual application apparent from other lines of approach. His reference to the devil as being the cause of death is verified in the fact that only by overcoming the devil in this particular wrong and impure thoughts in regard to sex can we lay hold of this power that is provided for the continuous life of the body. Does any doubtful one say, would you tell us that this, of all things, could be the means of the eternal life of our bodies? Remember that this was God's provision for creating the physical body you now have, and that this manifestation of his creative power, when the evidence is in from both sources, material and spiritual, should be seen to be his plan for continually recreating it, need hardly be surprising. We see the foreshadowed in the sign of the covenant. Why should the phallus be chosen rather than any other organ of the body to bind the covenant between God and man? Does not the time-honored rite of circumcision now seem to point to the correctness of the relation of the symbology of the tabernacle? Moreover, what is really more impracticable about living eternally than about living one day? Life itself is the wonder, but we do not stop to consider this because we see it is about us continually. But one compelled to speak could no more convincingly contend that we may not live eternally than he could accurately explain just how we live at all. Yet we do live. Death is the unnatural thing, and we have lived in the delusion that men must always die. But this is only following the natural order of physical, mental, and spiritual evolution, for the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. Finally, next time, a glance at fundamentals. Interesting. There's a lot of things that I agree with. There's a couple of things I definitely don't. But she's onto something with the lightning and the electrical components. Very much so. And death is an illusion. We transcend from this physical form into another body. But I would not expect them to know that all the way back then. And even then, they had a beautiful understanding of it. Interesting section, very long, but not too bad. This one, the last one, yikes. So, sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder. Be the lighthouse. See to ease your truths. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I have more people that watch that do not like. I don't understand what is so hard to do that. And if you don't like it, I totally get it. I'm not everybody's cup of coffee or tea, but it's a nice way to support the channel. Thank you for all of you who comment. Just leave a comment and your thoughts and opinions. Thank you. I really do appreciate all of you. And until the next one, I will be live tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday night live. I'll be live tomorrow. So we'll see. I might go earlier because I am off tomorrow. We'll see how far along in my day I get and what time I get back from my errands. But yeah, live tomorrow. So I hope to see you all then. Please be amazing souls. Love, love, love. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye for now.